we have a pretty good, a pretty full agenda. So let me call everyone's attention to the time and also call to order the oldest Lions Club in the world. So thank you for all of you that are joining. I'm Rudy Munguia, the president, and we will proceed then with our Zoom procedures. Our Zoom host today is Lion Leonor. So Leonor, would you tell us about that, please?
Hi, everybody. My name is Leonor. For those of you who don't know me already, I'm the secretary, also the Zoom host for today. Basically, if you've been on Zoom before, just keep yourself muted so we can keep that background noise away, but you're able to mute and unmute yourself as we go. Normally, we will allow you to open your mic for questions or anything like that, but if you need to interject at any time, just open your mic and let us know. Other than that, we're all good. Don't go to the bathroom with us, okay? Just close your video, but we're good. Thank you, Rudy. Back to you.
All right, thank you. And so to test everybody's being able to mute themselves while we have the pledge, would you do that now to mute yourself? And we are ready for our Pledge of Allegiance and pledge to the Texas flag. I will lead it, and as you are able, please stand, and Leonor will have the words up on the screen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Yeehaw! All right, thank you so much. So let's see who is visiting with us today. We are, again, so pleased and honored that we are having 8 new members involved in our induction ceremony. But let me, if I may, begin with a good friend, Rick Covington. Rick, will you wave, please, so we can? There's Rick. Rick and I have been longtime friends and have done all kind of things together, fun things, and so we welcome Rick to our meeting today. Glad to have you, Rick.
Great to be here.
Yeah, let's move on to other guests that we might have. Oh, I see.
Greg has a guest.
Yeah, Greg. Yeah, would you introduce your guest, please?
Sure. I'm happy to introduce my aunt and district governor-elect for 26M6 in southern Missouri, Phyllis Krebs.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Hi,
well, glad to have you. Okay, and any other guests? All right.
The others than the new members.
Yes, it's just our new members, and they will be taking part in our meeting here shortly. So we will not do the introductions at this time. So we are, I believe that covers all our guests. And so we are wanting to allow as much time as possible for two main parts of our meeting today. We have an important, an interesting program and speaker that will follow our induction ceremonies. But let's go ahead and move into our induction ceremony. Presiding will be immediate past President Lyon Ann Ward. And so, Ann, if I may, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Okay, thank you, Rudy. I'm very honored to be asked to induct our new members. This is a very special day for our club and for the 8 new members that we are inducting today. So as I call your name, this is going to be a little strange because we're on Zoom, but as I call the names of the new members and the sponsors, may I ask that those of you that are being inducted, please unmute yourself and wave so that everyone will know who it is. Okay? So this is in alphabetical order. Mary Lou Clayton, who is sponsored by Lion Rudy Mungia. Nanette Dew, who is sponsored by Lion Greg Dew. Susie Gallagher, who is sponsored by Lions Sid Popinski and Chuck Mandelbaum. Cody Nagy Montgomery, sponsored by Lion Patty Robinson. Sally Ramirez, sponsored by Lion Tommy Cowan, and I believe she is unable to join us today. Jordan Sheets, who is being sponsored by Lion Mim Ruby. And I might just add that Jordan reached out to the club last week, and he is just finishing his licensure as an architect. So he's going to fit right in with many in our club. But he's very familiar with lions from his hometown in Missouri, and he wants to get involved and get back to the city. So we're glad to welcome him. We're also inducting Kit Thompson, who is sponsored by Lions Chuck Mandelbaum and Sid Popinski, and Ophelia Zapata, who is sponsored by Lion Roberto Martinez. She's not able to be with us today, but Mac Ragsdale is filling in for Roberto. Well, new members, you are about to join the oldest continuously operating Lions Club in the world, the Austin Founder Lions Club. This club is part of Lions Clubs International, one of the largest service organizations in the world with more than 1.4 million lions in more than 200 countries. Lions Clubs International began as the dream of Chicago insurance man Melvin Jones, who led the Business Circle of Chicago. Jones believed that local business clubs should expand their horizons from purely professional concerns to the betterment of their communities and the world at large. After contacting several groups around the country, an organizational meeting was held June 7th, 1917 at the LaSalle Hotel in Chicago. The new group took the name of one of the invited groups, the Association of Lions Clubs, and a national convention was held in Dallas in October of 1917. 36 delegates representing 22 clubs from 9 states, including our club, were in attendance. The convention began to define what the association was to become. And since that humble beginning, Lions Club members have volunteered their time and talents to meet needs wherever they exist. Lions are especially dedicated to serving the blind and visually impaired, a commitment made after Helen Keller challenged our members to become her Knights of the Blind in the crusade against darkness during the 1925 convention in Cedar Point, Ohio. Our motto, "We Serve," perfectly exemplifies the dedication to helping those in need felt by Lions worldwide. Your membership in the Austin Founder Lions Club will help us carry on this tradition of service for many years to come. Our own club was chartered January the 18th, 1916 by Dr. William P. Woods of Evansville, Indiana, the founder of that first group, the Association of Lions Clubs. Because this club existed when LCI was founded the following year, we use the term Founder Club. For 105 years, Austin Founder Lions have been serving those needs in the Austin area, with projects ranging from vision screening of children and adults to eyeglass recycling. The Austin Founder Lions Club is committed to bringing the unparalleled services of Lions Clubs International to our local community. Among our many service projects, this club provides support to the Texas Lions Camp in Kerrville, awards annual scholarships for students at the Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired, conducts food and toy drives for needy Austin families, assists Meals on Wheels with food delivery, sponsors a peace poster contest for middle school students, and soon we will begin an environmental project recycling plastic that isn't recycled by the city. You will find that membership in our Lions Club and in Lions Clubs International will offer many opportunities for personal growth. Not only can you experience the incomparable feeling you receive from volunteering, but you will also have the chance to use your leadership, communication, and organizational skills, and you may attend district, state, regional, and international events for education about Lionism and for fellowship. You can develop friendships that last a lifetime. You can meet other Lions from all over the world, and you can contribute ideas that will help our club be an even more valuable part of the greater Austin community. The officers and members of this club are thrilled that you have chosen to help us continue the legacy of Lions Clubs International by improving the lives of the less fortunate and making our community an even better place to live. Since you have expressed a desire to affiliate with Austin Founder Lions Club and with Lions Clubs International, I now ask you to respond to these two questions. And this is for our 8 new members, those of you who are present. Do you hereby accept membership in the Austin Founder Lions Club and Lions Clubs International, knowing that you are encouraged to participate in functions of the club? And if so, please say, I do.
I do.
Thank you. To the best of your ability, will you abide by the Lions Code of Ethics, attend meetings whenever possible, and contribute your share to the activities of this club, our district, and Lions Clubs International? If so, say, I will.
I will.
Thank you. Congratulations. You are now officially a member of the Austin Founder Lions Club and of Lions Clubs International. Normally, at this time, your sponsor would present you with your Lions pin and pin it on you. This signifies your membership, and we would also present you with a new member kit. However, those will be mailed to you. Now, I would like to ask the sponsoring Lions to respond to my words with a simple I will. Will you fulfill the following obligations? Be a sponsoring mentor for your new Lion. Make your new Lion member feel welcome. Introduce your new member to all club members. Provide your new member with information about the club, its officers, and constitution. Encourage your new member to attend the club's new member orientation sessions. Be ready and willing to answer any questions that might arise. Encourage the new member to discuss with you any problems and offer possible solutions. And will you assist the new member in developing into an outstanding lion? If so, please say, I will.
I will.
I will.
Bill,
Thank you. Normally, we would now present the sponsor with their sponsoring pin, which is what I'm wearing today, and a certificate. However, those will be mailed to you. Now, fellow Austin Founder Lions Club members, our job is to create a welcoming environment and help maintain these new lions as our members. Each of us has a responsibility to help these new lions find fulfillment and satisfaction in their club membership. Will all of you on the call today please respond after I read this list of things that we need to do? So everybody can be unmuted for this. Will you fulfill these obligations? Welcome these
I
new.
will.
Let me get through the list and then we'll, yes. We will welcome these new Lion members and get to know them and help them feel part of our club. We will answer their questions and provide information when asked. We will invite new members to serve on our committees and work with us on our projects. And we will be open to new ideas and suggestions for improving existing projects. And if all of you fellow club members are willing to do this, please say, I will.
I will.
I will.
Will.
Thank you. Okay, now you can mute yourselves again. Let me congratulate all of you new Lions and welcome you to the greatest of all service organizations, the International Association of Lions Clubs. New fellow Lions, please wear your Lions pin, which I've got one here. Please wear your new Lions pin with pride, for it represents your membership in the world's largest service club organization, an association that has a distinguished legacy of meeting needs worldwide. During our orientation, you're going to learn more about LCI and what we do all over the world. And I think you will be especially proud of what you have, of the organization that you have joined. And we are all, and I'm speaking for all of the club members today, we are all extremely proud and happy to welcome you as a new member of the Austin Founder Lions Club. And congratulations and thank you.
well, a hearty hand clap and welcome to our new members. And on the screen, you see a photo of two that were not able to join us today. On your left is Lion Ofelia Zapata, and she is a trustee with AISD and is doing graduation ceremonies at Aikens High School at this moment. And on the right is Lion Sally, Azalea Sally Ramirez, who is also an AISD employee at Garcia Young Men's Leadership Academy. And so we wanted to at least have their photos if they're not able to attend. So I extend my congratulations to all our new Lions, and so pleased, and we will look forward to having a chance to actually meet in person, hopefully before too long, and offer a more personal welcome. So thank you again. Any thoughts or comments from any of our members before we move on?
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
all of you are most welcome. And thank you.
I have a question, Rudy. Is everybody able to see everybody now? Is this doable? Is this better?
I'm able to see more. I don't know what happened. Before I was only, like I said, mentioned earlier, I had only vision for 16, but now I have maybe 25. Anybody else able to see more on your screen? Okay, well, I
No,
don't know.
still see the same.
Yeah,
Little different configuration than we've been used to, but the same number.
yeah. All right, well, thank you, Leonard, or whoever it was that did their magic with the screen. Thank you so much.
Unmuted.
All right, we are.
We lost you, Rudy.
Yes, hello. I'm sorry. I think I got muted there. We are going to have a little transition before we get into our program, simply to take a moment to recognize our birthdays this week. And we have two great folks having their birthdays on June the 6th, Lion Susan Solling. Susan is a longtime member of our Lions Club and has even served as treasurer. So we extend our birthday greetings to Susan. And on June the 8th, Lion Brittany Hendrickson is having her birthday. So we are happy to extend our happy birthday wishes to Brittany. I believe that takes care of our birthdays. And now we are wanting to move into our program. And I'm happy to have the pleasure of introducing our speaker and our program for today. Today's program is both timely and appropriate in that the month of May was recognized as Mental Health Awareness Month. Our speaker today is Karen Ranus. She has been the executive director of the Central Texas affiliate of the National Alliance on Mental Illness since 2014. She has developed and implemented numerous mental health programs, making the Central Texas affiliate one of the strongest in the nation. She believes in the power of storytelling to engage people in important mental health conversations. After more than a year of pandemic-fueled anxiety, communities are seeing a rise in mental health concerns. Yet, despite this high prevalence, most people still struggle with talking openly about mental illness. Today, Karen will break down some of the most common mental health myths and provide some guidelines in transforming the way communities talk about and address mental health. Please help me welcome Karen Ranus.
Hello, everyone. So great to be here with you today. It was so nice to actually be here as you celebrated the process of bringing in some new members. It was fun for me to hear some of the history and all of that. So thank you for that. I'm glad I got to be here today. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start by sharing my screen and also my computer sound. So give me just a sec to set all of that up, and then I'll get started. Okay, you should be seeing my screen. You should be seeing a slide. If you don't, let me know. But again, my name is Karen Ranus. I'm the executive director for NAMI Central Texas. As you could tell from the introduction, I have a great deal of passion about this work. I always like to tell people before I start off to make clear that I'm not a therapist, counselor, social worker, psychologist. I don't have any expertise of that kind. One of the things that we talk about at NAMI is the fact that part of what brings us to this work with NAMI is often our own lived experience, and that is true for me as well. So much of my passion is around the fact that I am a family member. I almost lost my 18-year-old daughter to suicide about 10 years ago, and that's really how I got involved with NAMI. And this particular topic is one that's really important to me because I firmly believe that my daughter would not have gotten to the crisis that she got to if we lived in a community that talked more openly about mental health. And as the introduction alluded to, we certainly have some concerns that in the midst of isolation and a lot of trauma that we all collectively experienced in the last 15 months or so, we are seeing a rising number of folks talking about mental health, about expressing concerns about their mental health. So I'm so glad to be here with you today. And I certainly hope that I will equip you with some information that will help you in the future talking about mental health with a lot more comfort and a lot more confidence. So I'm going to start real quick with a video. This video comes from mentalhealthchannel.tv. So you can access their videos, and they have almost 150 of them that are all beautifully made. This one in particular is their more science focused one. So it is a psychiatrist that's going to talk a little bit about how we define mental illness. And I want to start with that because I think this is at the core of a lot of our myths. So let's start with that. If you don't hear it, let me know, but I did turn on the sound, so you should be fine.
There's no magic line between normal and abnormal. We think about impairment and mental illness when it reaches the point where it's impacting a person's quality of life. So, for example, we all have worries. We all have at times experienced feelings of panic that things aren't going to go well or that something bad's about to happen. But when that feeling becomes so pervasive that it keeps us from engaging in our community or leaving our house or doing the kinds of things that we want to do, when the symptoms reach that level, that's when we'd say we've crossed into a disorder, and we should really start thinking about the types of medication and therapy treatments that would be helpful to that condition. DSM as we know it now really began in the 1950s when the APA released a number of specific disorders with criteria as to how we might define and categorize those disorders. The DSM is designed to have flexibility within each diagnosis. It doesn't require that two patients with the same disorder have exactly the same presentation. So for example, in the disorder OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, patients have both obsessions and compulsions and functional impairment. But those obsessions and compulsions may not be the same from patient to patient. So you might have a child who's afraid of germs and who's compulsively washing his hands for hours a day, and we would call that OCD. And you might have another gentleman who is afraid that he's run over a person with his car and is spending hours a day circling the block or walking from his office back to the parking garage to make sure that there aren't feet sticking out from underneath his car. For one patient who may have depression that's largely characterized by low energy and inability to get out of bed and feeling numb, another person might feel jittery, have low appetite, and feel sad. Both folks have depression. Both respond to treatment, but they have individually very different presentations, even though they have shared the same common diagnosis of depression. Having a common language and a common framework allows us to advance the field. That is to say, in having a shared understanding, we can ask deeper research questions around what is causing these disorders. It allows us now to look at things like how genetics might be influencing our expression of mental illness, because now geneticists and psychiatrists can be sure that we're talking about the same kind of common languages when we look across tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of patients. It really provides the foundation through which we start to look at many of these research questions around what is the underlying cause of mental illness, but also importantly, what is the treatment that's going to help patients with these illnesses.
So there's a whole lot of things that this video raises that I think are important to point to. So one is, if you weren't aware, one of the ways that we diagnose a mental health issue is using the DSM-5. So that's the latest version of this manual that has the criteria in there. And that's how a diagnosis is made. It's not a blood test, it's not a scan, it's not anything that's really, concrete, right? And I do think that that's at the core of it all. One of the issues around mental health is that it is very difficult to diagnose, and there are no clear-cut diagnostic tools. So I do think that that adds to some of the myths around mental health issues. I think the other thing that you heard him say at the end is he talked a lot about the research piece, is the fact is there is still so much we don't know about the brain. The brain is incredibly complex. There's some things that we do know, that there's genetic components and other pieces, and I'm going to unpack that a little bit more for you, but there's a lot that we don't know. The other thing is that you'll notice that he talked about it being a brain-based biological disorder. And I think so often just in the language that we use, we separate it out, don't we? We talk about physical health and we talk about mental health as though they're very separate things, when the reality is that really we're talking about brain health. And the brain is in our body. It is physical, but we ration it out because we don't completely understand it and because there aren't good diagnostic tools. And so we oftentimes think that mental health issues are caused by people themselves, right? Bad behavior. And in fact, we talk about behavioral health, which I'm not a big fan of that language because it says, if you have a behavioral health issue, then why don't you just behave? So I don't really care for that language. I long for the day when we start talking about brain health. But for now, we're going to talk about mental health because it's the language we all know. I'm going to unpack a number of myths. I'm going to run through these pretty quickly because usually I take a full hour for this, so it may take a while. I mean, it usually takes a while, so I'm going to run through it very quickly. I am pretty good about watching the chat box, so I will certainly, if some questions pop up, and if it's an appropriate time for us to stop and answer them, I will. And so I see that there's a question that dropped in there, and I'm going to answer that towards the end, okay? So I see that question. So let's start with the most basic one of all in terms of the myths, and that is that it doesn't impact most people. Mental health conditions, that's something that happens to other people, but not to most people. Well, you would be surprised, I think, to find out that the numbers are actually 1 in 5. That means almost 44 million people are impacted by a mental health issue every single year, and that was pre-pandemic. I don't know what those numbers are going to look like as we start to continue to unpack the trauma of the last 15 months. But that 1 in 5 is actually a higher prevalence rate than diabetes, cancer, asthma, all these things that we talk about all the time. And we have races and we have t-shirts that we wear, and we're real comfortable talking about that. But we don't feel as comfortable talking about mental health conditions, and you probably know why, and we'll unpack that some more as well. But the reality is that with numbers like 1 in 5, that means all of us have been impacted. If you're not the 1 in 5, you are likely to be one who loves or cares or knows somebody that lives with a mental health issue. And let me give you some more information around what mental health conditions are, because I think most people think, oh, that's schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. But the reality is there's a full spectrum of different kinds of mental health conditions. And then, as that psychiatrist mentioned in the video, within those, there's different levels of severity and they manifest themselves in different ways. But these are all of the things that you will actually find in the DSM-5. And you will notice that they include things like ADHD, which often surprises people, substance use disorders as well, eating disorders, PTSD. So there's a full spectrum of different mental health conditions. And I would venture to guess that you either shake your family tree or think about the people that you know and love and care about in your life, whether that's colleagues, friends, people within the Lions Club. You probably know or love or care about someone who lives with a mental health condition. So here's another big one, and I've sort of alluded to this one. The fact that so often we think personal weakness or character flaws really cause mental health conditions. I will tell you that when I sat in the psychiatric hospital waiting for my daughter to be admitted, I remember sitting there going through the list of all the things that I had obviously done or failed to do as a parent that caused my daughter to end up in the crisis that she was in. But if she ended up in the hospital because she was in a diabetic coma, I wouldn't have done that. You see how we think so very differently about mental health? We often say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You just need to have happier thoughts, think more positively. I can remember all the different things that sometimes people would say out of kindness. They were trying to be helpful with my daughter, thinking that those things alone would really help. When the reality is, again, these are health issues. So therefore, they require a health approach. But we don't often take the same approach. So I love this little cartoon because it illustrates it really well, that when people say, I feel like I'm dying, and they have a physical health issue that oftentimes is more visible, people say, well, then let's get you to some help right away. But when people are living with depression or some other mental health issue that causes them to feel that way, we say, hey, just remember, people have it a lot worse. You're not as bad as some other folks. You should think happier thoughts. And so we approach it differently. And that's where a lot of the shame is. And while as a culture, we talk a lot about stigma, I think it's important that we understand that stigma manifests itself as shame. I wasn't ashamed of my daughter when she was navigating this awful health crisis, but I was ashamed of myself because I felt like I had failed as a parent. I must have done something wrong that she ended up in that state. And so we have to change that language and that understanding of how we think about mental health issues. So going back to the video, he sort of alluded to some of these things. Again, the brain is complex. There's a lot we don't know, but there's a lot that we do know. We know that genetics can play a big part in this. And at NAMI, one of the things that we talk about is the fact that oftentimes people can be predisposed genetically to some kind of mental health issue. And then many times there are what we call second triggers. So what are the things that oftentimes happen? Sometimes it's some kind of injury to the brain or other biological piece, but many times it's trauma or environmental stressors that can be those triggers to the onset of signs and symptoms. So we do know that all of those things play a part. It was so interesting as my daughter was recovering and we really looked at both sides of our family, we discovered there was a lot of depression and anxiety and some bipolar in our family as well that we had not realized because guess what? Like a lot of your families, our family didn't talk about it. And I want to point to again how this impacts the way our community responds. So I will give you a perfect example. 17 months before my daughter's diagnosis and treatment, my mother was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor with a glioblastoma, and she died within a month of her diagnosis. That was a really difficult time for our family. We were really fortunate to have hospice care, and we were able to keep her at home. And during that time, in spite of how challenging it was, we felt loved and supported, and we felt not alone because our community stepped up and showed us that they cared about us. And you know how they did that? They do that the way we do it in our culture. They brought us casseroles because you know what? There is nothing like a King Ranch chicken casserole that says, you're not alone. We support you. We love you. There is nothing we can do about the fact that your mom has a terminal brain tumor, but we want you to know you're not alone. 17 months later, as I brought my daughter home from the hospital and we were overwhelmed and working full time and had 2 other kids, how many casseroles do you think showed up on our doorstep? None, not one. And I want to be clear, this is not reflective of, oh, I have terrible friends. Clearly, that's not the case. They're wonderful people who care about our family. The only thing that changed and was different was the diagnosis. And people don't know how to respond, so they just don't respond. Everybody shuts down. There's silence. And that silence can be so overwhelming, and you feel so alone then as you're navigating this. So I want you to keep that in mind because in the future, you may encounter somebody who says, hey, I just brought my son home, or I've been dealing with a lot of depression and having a difficult time, and you'll know what to do. You'll go home and make that King Ranch chicken casserole. Okay, people with mental illness can't work. Well, I'm just going to go right back to the first myth that we talked about. If 1 in 5 people are impacted, we obviously know that people with mental illness not only are they able to work, they do work and they can be hugely successful at work. And in fact, studies show that employers show that they are, if not just on same par, often above other employees in terms of their punctuality and motivation and their tenure and all those things. A big piece in that though, like all health issues, is really effective treatment. When people have access to the kind of treatment that they need, this helps lower medical costs, create all kinds of possibilities for people to be really successful in their work. So that's great news, but then we have some bad news here, which is that many of us think, oh, well, most people have access to treatment, right? We have this big shift in the way we took care of insurance, and we now have what we call parity with mental health treatment. So you should be able to access mental health treatment just like you can other health treatment through your insurance, but that's not really the case. And the fact is that lots of people don't actually have access to treatment. And there's a number of reasons for that. One is in the state of Texas, we have 200 plus counties that don't have a single psychiatrist. We're in Travis County, Austin area, so we're pretty lucky because our numbers are pretty good. But literally, you just step over that county line into some of the surrounding counties and you have 0 psychiatrists. I will say in the midst of the pandemic, as more folks are utilizing telehealth, that is one of the ways that we're bridging that gap, but it's still a huge issue for this reason. More than half of our state psychiatrists are between ages of 55 and 62. What are they going to be doing soon? They're going to be retiring. The workforce shortage around mental health is a huge issue for our state. And in the last 2 legislative sessions, we've spent a lot of energy trying to address some of those things and shifting some of the barriers sometimes to people practicing in the state of Texas and creating more opportunities for folks like physician's assistants and psychiatric nurses to also do things like provide care and medication, so to bridge that gap. We also have a huge issue around Medicaid expansion. Man, I really hope this was a session that we would make a little more progress around this, because we have 1 million Texans, and actually I think that number's higher now, that don't have access to insurance and mental health treatment because of that. And then even in spite of folks that have access, who have maybe insurance and stuff, we also know that almost 60% of them are not accessing the treatment that they need. And there's a lot of issues around that. Some of that is because they have difficulty getting into a psychiatrist. It's not uncommon for people to reach out to us and say, I've been trying to get into some place for 8 weeks now and had no luck. So sometimes it's that, but sometimes it's just the barriers that I talked about earlier, the shame. People wait a long time before they get access to the help that they need because of the shame. And we know that even psychiatrists themselves, or physicians, I mean, when they're trying to access some outpatient mental health treatment, they tell us they're also having difficulty doing that. So this is a huge issue and continues to be an issue that we're struggling with as more people are accessing treatment. It used to be, we just got calls about people having difficulty accessing a psychiatrist. Now we're having people that are telling us they're having to wait a long time to access seeing a therapist, because so many people are reaching out to get help. Good news, but still a lot of folks that don't get the access that they need. This is a really big one. I think most of you, if I said, close your eyes and paint a picture for me of what mental illness looks like in a person, you would probably paint the picture in your mind of an adult. But the reality is that kids do get mental illness. In fact, I actually need to update this number. We just got some new numbers, and the number is actually 1 in 6. However, still a pretty high prevalence rate in children who have a diagnosable mental health disorder. And 50% of them, 50% of lifetime mental health issues show their signs by age 14. This was my daughter. As she recovered, one of the things we realized is we started to see the signs around 9th grade, around freshman year of high school. She was exactly that age, 14. But this is the piece that's troubling. The delay between the onset of symptoms and receiving treatment is sometimes 8 to 10 years. And lots of terrible things happen during that time. One is we see a lot of these kids dropping out of school. Many times they look like the bad kid because they're dropping out of school, they're using drugs and alcohol. 70% of the kids in our juvenile justice system have a diagnosable mental health issue. Many of them get into trouble because they can look like this kid. And this is true. So I often tell people, if you're seeing signs of drug use, of self-harm, of eating disorders in a young person that ordinarily has not shown previously those kinds of things, you need to unpack that, because many times what we are seeing is an untreated, undiagnosed mental health issue. And yes, as I said, many times it looks like this, the kid who's not going to school, not getting out of bed. But I want to be clear, it's also this kid. It's your super high achieving kids who are really focused on perfectionism and success and feel like they have a lot of pressure put on them. This was my kid. She'd received an academic scholarship, was in an honors program, all of this stuff. And you would have not known from seeing her on the outside how much she was really struggling. So we need to be very much aware, especially as we talk about the fact that the pandemic has had a big impact, and we know that it's had a big impact on youth. We've seen an increase in the number of kids showing up in the emergency departments dealing with mental health crisis. Our local hospital, Dell Children's, tells us that there's been about a 30% increase in the number of cases that they're seeing. So that's a huge issue that we're seeing. So be aware of that if you have young people in your life. This is a big one. People with mental illness are violent, and this one has such a sticky quality to it. And I bet you can guess why. That in spite of the fact that only 4% of violence in the United States can actually be attributed to mental illness, and there are studies showing this, we still think that this is true. And largely it's for this reason. It's this connection with the media. Almost always when there's some tragic event that happens, some violent event that happens, we quickly go to attributing it to mental illness. And many times it is media, not just news media, but also media in terms of fictional shows that also reinforce this. But I want you to understand and know that actually people living with mental illness are far more likely to be victims than perpetrators of crime. And in fact, they're 10 times more likely to be victims of violent crime than the general population. So I want to go back to the 4% so I can unpack that for you because it does exist. So what you need to know is in that 4%, almost always, it is people in the midst of psychosis. They are having delusions, hallucinations. Many times they think they're being sought after, that people are after them. They're in the midst of untreated psychosis. That's why treatment is so important. And early treatment is so important for this reason, so people don't get to that stage. But almost always you're seeing someone in the midst of psychosis, untreated. Many times they've been using drugs or alcohol additionally. Many times they've had previous violent behavior, so there's been a pattern of it. And almost always when you see the violence, it's very rarely actually random. We actually see more of the violence happen within their own network of either close family or friends. But going back to, that's why it's so important we talk about this and folks get help early on so that we don't get to that place of these extremities. The other thing I'm going to tell you is that so often as we work with families who have individuals in their families who have very serious mental illness, and they see the signs of escalating concern that our system of care in the United States is not working effectively. It is very flawed. So many times families recognize that their loved ones need help and they can't access the help that they need. It is very sad to me that I have parents that call me and say, I don't want my son to be incarcerated. I don't want him to end up in jail, but I feel like we don't actually have any choice at this point because we're not getting the help that we need. Our jails have effectively become our largest, and I use this term loosely because they're not equipped to be mental health centers, but they have our largest population of individuals living with mental illness throughout the United States. The biggest mental health facility in the United States is Cook County Jail in Chicago. Okay. So here's a big one. There's no link between physical health and mental health. So often, as I mentioned before, we think of physical health as something separate, but it's all in our body. So just know that this is most evident in areas of chronic conditions. So when people live with serious mental illness, they're at high risk of contracting and having chronic physical health issues. In fact, someone living with serious mental illness is likely to die 25 years earlier than their peers. So it's a really serious health issue. But likewise, people living with chronic physical conditions are also at risk of developing mental health issues. So if you live with chronic pain or you develop cancer and you're dealing with all kinds of really traumatic or very painful experiences in the health field, you can develop depression, anxiety, PTSD. The reality is our body and our mind are all connected. It's all one package deal. People with mental illness don't get better. I will tell you that I think this was one of the myths that really, I think, tripped up my daughter. She thought I'm doing all the right things and I'm not getting better. And for her, the doing the right things was really about focusing on school, being super, focused on that. She didn't think she was going to get better. And I'll be honest with you, when we first brought her home from the hospital the first 9 months, we weren't sure either. It was a really difficult time. But I want to assure you that people can and do get better, that in fact, the treatment success rates for mental health issues are about as high as they are for other health issues. And I know for my own daughter, in spite of the fact that I did not think she had the potential to even make it back to school at some point, she graduated with highest honors from Portland State University. In fact, she moved across the country and is thriving and doing well. She still lives with chronic depression and anxiety, but she learned how to manage it really well. And some of the things that she's got to do, this path to recovery includes a lot of different things. And let me be clear, what it looks like is very individual. What works for one person may not work for another. It's kind of like what the doctor was talking at the beginning. Even the signs and symptoms can be different, and so can treatment. That's why it's so difficult to treat. Medication is oftentimes a key to this. We shame people for psychiatric medications in ways that we would never shame someone for other health issue medications. So we would never shame someone for having to take insulin for their diabetes, but it's very interesting to me to see a lot of the stigma around psychiatric medication. But I'll be honest with you, my daughter would not be alive today if it were not for the medications that she takes every day. But key to all this as well is therapy. She's had to learn positive coping skills. She's had to learn how to navigate and understand what triggers are for her. Exercise plays a big part in this. Our brain really benefits from exercise, whether we have a mental health condition or not. So exercise is critically important, just as healthy diet is. And then this is a big one. Almost every person I know that is living well in recovery with a mental health issue talks about sleep. And let me tell you, folks, all of us, this is true. Our brain needs sleep in order to function well. So this is a big part of it. So as you can see, there's a lot of things that play a part in that recovery, but support and engagement are so important. Like all people, people living with a mental health issue need to feel like they're part of a community and that they belong and that there's a place for them to be and to be able to be fully who they are. So that's critically important. Most people don't think about mental health conditions as being life-threatening. If I tell you that I just got a diagnosis of cancer, you're likely to get really worried, and the first thing you'll think about is you could die. But we don't think about that when we think about things like depression or anxiety or bipolar disorder. But mental health conditions are life-threatening, because what we know is that mental illness can be a factor in as many as 90% of our deaths by suicide. And we have to talk about suicide when we talk about mental health issues, because suicide has been surging. We're at the highest levels that we've ever seen in terms of suicides. And again, I don't know what that's going to mean in the future as we come out of this pandemic, but we know that we've seen vast increases in youth as well. In fact, one of the rates that was troubling to me is in really young people. So girls ages 10 to 14, we saw their numbers triple. And that's a small number, but still, we're seeing those numbers rise. So it's a great concern. These are the most recent numbers that I have, but we know that more than 47,000 people died from suicide in 2019. That's 130 suicides every single day. And most importantly, what we need to understand is 3 times the number of homicides. This is a huge public health issue. It's not just a mental health issue, it's a public health issue when that many people are dying from something that largely can be preventable. We also know that, look at this number of attempted suicides, and those are the numbers that we know. There's a lot of folks that we know that potentially are attempting suicide that, that we don't even know about, right? So lots of overwhelming sort of information that I've given you, and it can sort of feel a little overwhelming. And you say, well, what can we do if there's so many things that are beyond our grasp? So here's the thing that I want to make sure that you can do. And I'm actually not going to show this video because I want to make sure we have ample time for questions. But this video talks about empathy and creating space for people to be able to talk openly about mental health. And NAMI Central Texas is big on that. Like, that's one of our big things about how do you start a mental health conversation, because it's so important for us to create space in which we understand that there should be no shame here, that these are important issues that we need to address. And so, okay, I'm going to skip through this. And I'm actually going to skip through this as well, because I want to make sure that we get to questions, because there's a few questions in here that I do want to respond to. So what can you do? Most importantly, speak up. I mean, I've given you a lot of things to think about, but talk about what you've learned with each other, with your family, with your colleagues. Reach out to me if you want to learn more and you want to say, where did you get that statistic? I'm happy to share that with you. And then start a mental health conversation, especially if there's someone in your life that you've been worried about. Let them know that, hey, this has been a really hard year. I'm concerned and I'd love to talk to you about this, because now that I know more. Keep learning. Mental Health First Aid is a great resource. It's an 8-hour course. Our local mental health authority provides that. NAMI Central Texas does webinars on a monthly basis. We do 2 a month on a variety of topics. You can also access those webinars recorded on our website. We have a plethora of resources on our website as well. Learn more and just keep learning. And then I really want to encourage you to advocate for change in how your community and how your workplace and how your Lions Club addresses mental health. And then I want to make sure that you know what the resources are. So I'm going to pull these up. These are great resources. I encourage you, put these numbers on your phone while they're up right now. 741-741 is the crisis text line. It's a great resource, especially for youth, because you can literally text to that number and somebody immediately will respond. Suicide Prevention Lifeline, in spite of the name, you don't have to have concerns about a suicide to call them. You can actually call them and just say, I need to have a conversation with somebody and I'm worried and I don't know how to do this and I need your help and what should I know? And they can walk you through that. Integral Care is our local mental health authority. Most people don't even know who they are and what they do, but see that number, 512-472-HELP? There are clinicians that respond to those numbers. And if you have someone in your life that you're concerned about, you can call them and walk through what your concerns are, and they can actually send a clinician to your home to do an assessment, or they can meet you someplace. And then they'll follow you for 90 days to ensure that you're getting the help that you need. It's a huge resource. So make sure you know that number as well. Okay, I covered a lot of information. It's your turn to ask questions, and I'm fine with you asking either through the chat or if you want to unmute yourself. But I do see a few questions that I did get that I want to respond to. So we have a couple of questions. One was really about, is there a clear, bright line between mental illness and normal? And I would say no. I think that's some of the difficulty around, again, responding to this. One of the things that we say to people is, how do you know? And it's like, well, severity and persistence are the two things that we talk about with people. If it's severe enough that it's really changing your life and you notice changes in yourself on a daily basis for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks, folks, 2 weeks or more, you should follow up with your primary care physician and take a look at that. I know from my own experience, I talked about my mom. In the months after her death, I found myself slogging through every day. I found myself having to take a nap, and I'm not a napper. I have a lot of energy. I don't nap. And I just found like every day I'd get up in the morning and the first thing I would think about is, when do I get to come back to bed? It was just me not feeling like myself, and it had been going on for a while. And I went to see my primary care physician. This goes to show you sort of spectrum, right? I had situational depression, like I was grieving. I did some intensive grief therapy, and I also did take an antidepressant for about 6 months, tapered off of that. I haven't had any other issues around depression. My depression looked very different than my daughter's. But that's how I knew. So I don't know that there's a bright line, but what I tell people is pay attention to your gut. Only you know how you're feeling, and that's what you should pay attention to. And then someone also asked, the body naturally works to cure itself of injury. Is that also true for mental disorders? I don't think it's any truer than, I would say that the body, in spite of all the things you might do, my family, there's a history of diabetes, so I'm seeing a nutritionist right now to avoid developing diabetes. My hope is that if I follow, exercise and really pay close attention to my diet as my A1C numbers start to rise, that I can prevent the onset of that. And so I'm trying to work toward that. But if someone has diabetes and they're at the point where they're taking, their body isn't going to heal itself. That's a pancreatic issue. So that's not true for all health issues. And that's not always true for mental health issues. You certainly hear great signs. Again, I just mentioned to you, my doing therapy, folks are looking at lots of different alternative ways to care for themselves. Yoga can be really helpful. There's all kinds of new therapies developed, EMDR, all kinds of other things. And I say, again, because there's so little that we do know, I encourage people to, only you can be an advocate for your health and reach out and try different things if that's what helps you. And then somebody asked, what role does social media play, especially for youth? And I will say, it's very interesting if you look at the onset of smartphones and you look at the trajectory of mental health issues and suicides among young people, they match. You can see them both rising at the same pace. So do I think that these devices, which I think are wonderful, I love my phone, keeps me connected to my family, all kinds of things, right? But like all things, there's both good and bad things that come from both social media and the use of our phones. And I would say that's not just youth, that's all of us that are impacted by that. These are created to be very addictive tools. So I have taken all the notifications off my phones, and I've encouraged my daughters, who are adults, but I've said, take all your notifications on your phone. Those little bright red dots are there to addict you so that you're constantly checking your phone, right? So do we think social media have played a part? I think it has, in the sense that there's a lot of bullying happening, in the sense that I think it's really hard for all of us. We put our best face forward, most of us, on social media. And so I think for a lot of us, we look, and especially young people, look at their peers saying, wow, they've got it all together. They've got it all figured out. They're happy. I'm not. I love this quote that talks about how the comparison is the thief of joy. And I think, unfortunately, social media has that impact on all of us. It has this tendency to think everybody else is doing better than we are, having happier lives, so I do think that it's played a part probably for youth, but also for all of us. And so we need to be mindful of our social media usage. Okay, we're at like 1:29, so I'm trying to be really careful about the time. I covered a lot of information. I'm happy to stick around if people have additional questions, but I also want to be mindful of your time. I hope that you heard some things today. I know I was sort of like giving you lots, but I hope that you heard some things that might be helpful to you as you think about mental health and how you talk about it in your circle of friends, family, colleagues, peers, fellow Lions.
Well, Karen, thank you so much. Yes, there was a lot to digest in the last few minutes, but thank you so much. So very helpful. If you are giving us a few more minutes, let me open the floor to questions. And Leonor, I'm going to ask your help with this, please.
Sure. Okay, Lord, go ahead. You got a new computer and you don't know how to unmute yourself. Yeah,
I want to point out while we're waiting for that person that I did drop our website address. One of the things I didn't say was that we do provide free classes and support groups for families and individuals living with mental illness. Those are at completely no cost. Right now, we're doing it all virtually, but we'll be moving some of those to in-person, hopefully sometime this fall. But again, we're just a great resource, whether you're navigating it on your own or you know someone who is. The class that I took with NAMI, 10 years ago was transformative for our family because we learned so much, and it helped us become better advocates for our daughter, but also for ourselves. And it helped us honestly diminish some of that shame we were still carrying around. So I just want to make sure you know that we're a great resource in that respect. Okay, you have a question?
Yeah, Gaylord, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was unmuted. I've had continuous internet interruptions and missed sometimes 5 and 6 minutes at a time, and I had to re-click and rejoin about 3 or 4 times. I may have missed something, but because my family and a tenacious spouse were able to help, we've had a 20-year experience with assisting someone that was, as you say, suicidal. In fact, I just want to congratulate you first on how thorough your presentation is, and it reflects over 20 years of experience we've had. And one thing I would point out is it's so important for the caregiver, let's say such as yourself or what we've done, to maintain patience and a lot of belief and hope, because we did a nationwide search for the right psychiatrist, psychologist, or therapist for this person. And it started off with the first psychiatrist we were referred to is pulled open his drawer and took some samples out and said, say these, and this person just spiraled downward. And we finally, it was truly a nationwide search. We were fortunate to find a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and a therapist that loved this person and took them under their wing. But it took many years. And one thing that I would stress is the help of therapy. Gosh, we went through every type of treatment, including brain treatment, as well as every type of medication. And it turned out that this person meeting with others with similar problems, as well as one-on-one therapy, was invaluable. And physical exercise became critical. And that helped maintain a balance. But this person had been diagnosed with almost every one of those mental illnesses that you described. And this team has said that's the most depressed person they've ever assessed that has not committed suicide. And he's still with us and somewhat productive, but you have covered it all. You've made it such a thorough, but the frustration that comes with it still being a frontier science, and you never know who it's going to hit, and you don't know that it's hit. And this person was an outstanding athlete, and they were always things then fell apart, where he went from being an all-state baseball player to he couldn't hit a basketball if they threw it to the plate. And the same with football. And I think a lot of the disappointment had a lot to do with it. But the patience, particularly with being such a frontier science, was something that demands so much patience and continued hope. And it all adds up, though. I'm still convinced that a marvelous yellow lab had a lot to do with saving this person's life. Literally, that yellow lab was there by his side, when he was in a fetal position and couldn't get out of bed, that dog was right there. When he would wake up, that dog would set up and trot with him every step of the way. I think that type, you never know where you get that help, but I just want to congratulate you. That is a wonderful, thorough, very supportive presentation that we've kind of lived through, but it sure does take a lot of patience, as you know, in your personal references. I know are not comfortable, but they were invaluable too. And thank you so much. And I've sort of gone so long, but a good part of our life has been spent trying to save the life of this person. And it's been quite a journey, to say the least, and the journey's not over. But thank you again for such a marvelous presentation. You give us all more hope.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for sharing your own experience, because you just affirmed everything that I was saying. And I love what you were saying again about the therapies. And yes, I totally agree on the brain science. Like, we're still so far behind on that. There just wasn't a lot of money invested in brain research for a number of years. That's shifting, but we're playing catch up at this point, and it's frustrating in the midst of that. I often say that I think some years from now, we'll look back and look at the way that we responded to brain health issues and realize how barbaric we often were in terms of how we address some of those. And, you know, it's coming, but I do think it's a slow process, but I do think new technology, new information is coming every day. And I think there is a great deal of hope. And as you pointed out, important for caregivers to have this information and to be affirmed, and how difficult it is to do this. I often say that I think one of the gifts of the work we do is that we help keep families together and keep them engaged, because so often, again, it can look like behavior that just looks like bad behavior, going back to the issues around that. And then until we understand that they are mental health issues, that they really are health issues, it does cause us as family members to not fully understand. And I think fully understanding means that we deepen our empathy and compassion and understanding for our loved one. And I loved what you said about the dog, because my daughter has an emotional support cat. And I also do think that there was a period of time, she got that cat within a couple of months after she was home. And I do think that he saved her life along the way. So agree with you.
Maybe one or two more questions.
Sure, I'm game.
I don't think there are any, at least I don't see any hands up.
All right, okay. Let me just ask Karen, last weekend or so in the sports world, Naomi Osaka kind of shocked the world by kind of doing strange things at a tournament. Are you familiar with that? And
yes, I did read that story.
Is that also an example of mental health issues?
Well, I think based on what I've read and what she shared, that she does, it sounds like she's a very introverted person and lives with, she's apparently had some depression, and some pretty serious depression, and has really been challenged by navigating that. And I think what she was saying is she recognized that sitting in on those press conferences were going to be triggering for her. And so that's why she had opted out. I also read in what she wrote that she recognized that maybe she should have handled it differently, or maybe handled it earlier, because I don't think her intent was to have caused so much uproar. I don't think she was expecting that. But I say kudos to her for recognizing what it is that she needed to do and naming that and taking care of herself. She's young, she has a lifetime ahead of her, and clearly she had to make some really tough decisions about choosing what she needed to do to take care of herself. You know, so it's not uncommon for us to hear people talk about, for instance, having to set boundaries with people in their lives who are triggering for them, you know, making difficult decisions like that. So these are not easy decisions. And I think without knowing more than what we know about what was in the media and what she shared on her own social media, it sounds like she made the decision she needed to make to take good care of herself. And that may be difficult to understand from the outside, but clearly I feel like she was very authentic in that.
Well, thank you so much. We may need to call time and return to our agenda so we can finish our business. But before we do, Karen, thank you again so very much. And I want to reach out to Rick Covington also. Rick, I've not had the pleasure of personally meeting Karen, but I am meeting her through my friend Rick Covington, who suggested Karen as the person that would bring this message to our Lions Club. So Rick, thank you so much. Do appreciate it. And again, Karen, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much. It was great to be here. And thank you for all you do for our community. Appreciate you.
Thank you. So we are returning to our agenda and our program for next week. I'm going to ask Lion Linda Locke if you would help us. What is next week's program, please?
My daughter will be presenting and helping us understand a little bit more about clinical research projects and how things can happen for us and even get paid to have things checked out to be sure that we're well, particularly visually, because that's what she's doing now is just all vision care.
Wonderful, wonderful. Look forward to that program. And we did not have announcements today, but let me ask Leonore for help. Can you put up some of the photos from our Central Market social that we had? We had a great time last Thursday, kind of catching up a little bit with each other. And so just wanted to put up a few photos of those that were able to attend, and the joy of actually sitting around a common table and having conversation. And I trust that this is maybe the turning point where we might enjoy each other's personal company again very soon. So thank you so much. And one last announcement that was presented to the board recently and approved, and that is that our Sporting Clay fundraiser event, we have a date for that, and that date is, let me look, September the 17th. It's a Friday. So we'll talk more about this, but just want to bring that to everyone's attention. It is a fundraiser. Sporting Clay is a very important part of our Lions Club. It involves working with other partners. So that date is September the 17th. All right. We have covered as much as we dare do today, given our time. And thank you to all that participated. A special congratulations again to our new members. It's a thrill and exciting to have all of you now part of our Lions Club. Thank you to immediate past president Ann Ward, who as always does an excellent job in presiding. So thank you so much. And if there are no other—
Rudy, before you
Yes.
leave, you
Yes.
can adjourn, because if people need to go, of course they can go, but maybe could we hear from the new members, just their voice and
Yes.
just a little bit about them?
That's a great idea. Let me adjourn, but those members that may still be with us, if you could share a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself. But before we do that, it is time for me to do my business, and that is to bring this meeting to a close. And so with this, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.
Kit and Susie, do you want to go ahead?
Well, we've already known a lot of Lions because we have done several activities already, right?
Yes.
But anyway, we have lived in Austin. I've lived in Austin since 1988.
I've been here since 1964.
So talk about getting here as soon as you could. But anyway, and I am very interested in especially in vision problems. I was extremely myopic. I'm fortunate to say I had cataract surgery and had wonderful implant lenses.
Okay.
So.
And I am interested in vision things as well, because I have a background in photography, and I'm very much aware of how much difference quality eyesight makes, and that all of us need to maintain visual health and help others with it. So I'm interested in that too.
Perfect. Thank you. And welcome to both of you. Maybe Jordan, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Jordan Sheets. I'm from Southeast Missouri originally. I went to the University of Missouri in Columbia before going to University of Texas for my master's in architecture. And I recently finished up my my licensing exams. So I have a little bit more time than I have had for the last few years. I moved here in 2014 and have been looking for ways to get more involved in the community. A lot of people, you know, a lot of my dad's friends in my hometown, they're Lions, and they did things for the community that was great, and they were a group of people that I would want to associate myself with, and that's what I'm looking forward to doing with you guys, networking and giving back to the community.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And for all the new people, you will probably, you'll see email announcements because you've been added to our website. So you'll see email announcements of our weekly luncheons. Occasionally, you'll receive emails as well from our president or from myself. If there's anything, volunteer opportunities going on, I'll shoot out those email addresses as well. Mary Lou, are you still here? Could we hear from you, please? You switched off your video. You can switch it back on and maybe alongside it, next to the video. There you go. Perfect.
Technology is not my strength. I'm just thrilled to be part of this group. My father and my husband were both active members and love Lions, and everything that Lions have always done is so impressive. So thank you for letting me be part of it. I'm looking forward to it.
I may want to add, Mary Lou's much too modest. Mary Lou, longtime principal in AISD of Lee Elementary School. Her parents, George and Johnny Boone, have a elementary school named after them. Her mom, Johnny Boone, was Administrator of the Year in AISD. There is a long family tradition. And so Mary Lou, I'm sorry to have to be pushing you a little bit on this, but yeah, she's a favorite of mine. So thank you for joining us today, Mary Lou.
Thank you.
All right, Cody, could you go ahead?
Hi, I am Cody Nagy Montgomery, and I'm very, very grateful for this opportunity to join and very fully participate now in the Austin Founders Lions Club. I feel like I've been hanging out on the fringe for several years. I've met quite a few of you on different capacities, so I'm grateful to be a part of the mix, and I'm excited about joining in. And I'm very grateful to be working with Miss Patty Robinson and Miss Kim Wright, helping out with our school TSBVI Leo Club and getting our students encouraged to sign up and participate in helping out in the community as much as possible. I'm about to start my 25th year at the Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Yay. So I like it there. It's a pretty amazing place, and I'm grateful to have been able to meet quite a few of you guys through it. So it's an exciting journey, and I'm very, very pleased to be a part of the hands-on with the Lions Club now. So yay, thanks for letting me in, y'all. Appreciate it.
Perfect. It's great to hear from you and to finally have you as an official member. Rudy, back to you for wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for sharing.
All right. Okay. If there are no other new members that might join and share a little bit, again, it was a full agenda. We went over a little bit, but I feel like we had so much to share, and I trust that everyone feels that worked out well. So until next week, we will wish everyone a happy rest of the day and be careful. And so we will look forward to seeing you next Thursday at a regular meeting. So Y'all enjoy.